Now we're on Daf Ayin Ches Amud Beis, and Rava says that the word "seh" ze binyan av kol makom shenebar "seh" eno ela lahoti es hakelayim. So we have two reasons why in the Havamina of the Gemara why we should think that we should exclude kelayim from Osov Espino. Reason number one is because it's not suitable for kachim. It's excluded from kachim. And reason number two is because here in Osov Espinol, the Torah explicitly uses the word seh, and Rava says that the word seh means a definite seh. It's 100% seh. Both the father and the mother are seh, as opposed to kalayim. Omar kra o l'Rabba kalayim. So now the Gemara says we need that extra word o. It says shar o seh Osov Espino. The o is superfluous. It could have said shar vise. Why did it say shar ose? And the o is coming as a ribui to include kilayim in the iser of osov espino. Now I'm going to stretch my neck out and say that that's going to apply even in kachim, meaning if you have kachim of Kilayim, that's possible in Mizbeach, but as far as the Yisur Lav Osov Espino is concerned, we have this O L'Rabos, that's included in the Lav of Osov Espino. Okay. So now the Gemara is going to tell us that you have no green light to use O to include Kilayim. And this is what we have to write on the big board over here, because we're going to go through many, many different circles until we come back to O l'Ravos Kilayim. But we need the word O for something else, and that's called l'chalik. What does l'chalik mean? The Torah says, shor oseh. I'll read the pasuk. Sorry, you should know the pasuk by heart already, right? It says, "V'shar oseh oso v'es beno lo sishketu b'yom echad." Now, imagine if we didn't have the word O, and we read it v'shar v'seh. That would indicate that you only violate the lav if you shecht both a shar and its offspring and a seh and its offspring, all told 4 shchitos. Only then would you violate the lav. Therefore, we need the o l'chalik to tell me that if you shecht the shar with its offspring, or alternatively the seh with its offspring, you get malchus, you violate the law. So hi o mi boile l'chalik. Salke dat kamina ad shochit shor ubno, seh ubno, 4 shchitos, the shor and its offspring, the seh and its offspring. Lo machayiv, you're not in violation. Kamashma lo, now I need the word o to tell me l'chalik that you violate the law for either shor and its offspring or seh and its offspring. Now, if this be the case, and we need the word olachalik, we no longer have a source from which we could derive the ribui of kilayim, because O is no longer superfluous. So the Gemara says, lachalik mibno nafka. I don't need the word O to teach me lachalik. I could derive it from the singular, grammatical singular of the word bino. And if it's singular, it means one ben, which means either the ben of the shar or the ben of the seh. However, the Gemara now is going to argue that there's another possibility here, and that means that we need the word o, lechalik, and we can't rely on beno, because maybe you would read it shar viseh, if you don't have the word o, ubno, which means that you have to have 3 shchitos. You'd have to shecht the shar and the seh, and beno, and then one of the two offspring, whether the offspring of the shor or the offspring of the seh, but all told you need three shchitos. That's what the Gemara is going to ask now. V'akati, nevertheless, mi boile, I still need the word o. Look at the brisa. The brisa says the following: Ilu nemar shor v'seh ubeno, and we didn't have the word o. Hayisi omer achi yishchot shor v'seh ubeno, meaning the ben of one of the two, but you have to check both the shor and the seh in the older generation. Talmud lomer shor o seh also v'sbeno. So again, we see that we need the word o to derive this. My love may o nafka le lo. We're going to derive that all you need is two shchitos, meaning either the shor and its offspring or the seh and its offspring, from the word oso. Because oso, again, is in the singular. So in other words, we don't need the word o. And the word o now becomes superfluous. We're back to square one to derive that even kilayim is included in oso v'esmeno. Ha nichel rabbanan de maisi lehu oso el chananya de lo maisi le oso lechalek minole. So we're going to have a machlokas in a minute between the Chachamim and Chananya. And they're going to argue about whether or not the Isur Lav applies even if you shecht both the father and the offspring on the same day, or no, it's only on the mother. And we're going to soon see that in the light of that machlokes, Chananya is going to derive from the word oso in the masculine gender, that even if you shecht the father and the offspring on the same day, you violate the law. So therefore, Chananya doesn't have the luxury of using the word oso to teach me lechalek. And Memela, if I need oso to teach me lechalek, I can't use. I need oso and o, right? That combination. And the Gemara answers lechalek lo tzarich kra. Okay, so now we're learning a machlokes which is all over Shas between Rav Yoshia and Rav Yonasan. And they argue when the Torah says X and Y, don't do X and Y, does it mean that you only violate the lav if you do X plus Y? Or does it mean X or Y? Like, for example, the original machlokus is going to be in Maseches Sanhedrin about Makalel Aviv. Right? The Torah says, Ish ki yakalel Aviv ve'imo. Now, if you read the pasuk literally, you're only chayav if you curse both your parents. However, Rabbi Yonasan is going to say that whenever the Torah says A and B, it means A or B. So you're chayav for either cursing your mother or for your father. And therefore, when it says shar o seh, according to Rabbi Yonasan, I don't need the word o. I derive l'chalek from the universal principle that applies in Kol Torah Kula, that when it has a vav, it means o. So it means shar o seh, but it doesn't mean that you have to check both the shar and the seh. So I don't need, according to Rabbi Yonasan, a source for l'chalek. And therefore the Gemara says l'chalek lo tzarich kla. So we're going to now link up Chananya together with Rabbi Yonasan. And if we link up Chananya together with Rabbi Yonasan, then we come to the conclusion that the word o is superfluous, because I could derive l'chalek from the vav even without the o. Because if you hold like Rav Yonasan, then whenever the Torah says x and v y, it means either x or y. So I already know l'chalek. Tisanya ish ki yakalis aviv ves imo. This brisa that we're learning now is all over the show. It's all over Shas. Primarily in Sanhedrin, that's the main thing. Ainli ella aviv ve'imo. I would interpret this pasuk literally that he's only chayiv for klola if he curses both his mother and his father. Aviv shelo imo v'imo shelo aviv minan. How do you know if you curse one of your parents you're chayiv? Talmud Lomer, Aviv ve'imo kilel, Aviv ve'imo, I'm sorry, Aviv ve'imo kilel, Aviv kilel imo kilel. So this is the drasha that Rav Yoshia needs, because Rav Yoshia says that whenever it says vav, it means both. So I need this extra pasuk in order to teach me, because in the first part of the pasuk, the word yikalel is put with aviv, and in the second part of the pasuk, it's put yikal imo, and that intimates that a child is responsible for cursing either parent separately. So in any event, the bottom line is that Rav Yoshia needs a separate drasha to teach us that you chai for cursing one of your two parents, because otherwise you would interpret the vav of ish asher yikal es aviv ve'es imo as meaning that he was makal both of them. So I need drasha lafuke. But Rabbi Yonasan Omer mashma shneim ke'echad umashma echad l'fnei atzmo. It's true that I have two ways of going. I don't know if ve means and or viv means or. The assumption is going to be that it's either or, unless the Torah adds the word yachtav. For example, in Devarim, Parshas Kitetze, Perek Chav Beis, it says, Lo sachrosh b'shar uv'chamor, that you're not allowed to plow with two species, the ox and the donkey together, and adds the word yachtav. If not for the word yachtav, I would have said either shar or chamor. So therefore, according to Rav Yonasan, only when the Torah adds the word yachtav, then we say X plus B. But if the Torah didn't say the word X yachtav and it says X and B and Y, it means X or Y. And now again, we're going to connect Chananya together with Rav Yonasan. We're going to put Chananya on the shoulders, piggyback on Rav Yonasan. And therefore, when it says in the parasha of Osoves Beno, the Vav should be read as either or, because it doesn't say Yachtav. And therefore, I come to the conclusion that I don't need O L'chalek, and therefore O, according to Chananya plus his buddy Rav Yonasan, comes as a ribui to include Kilayim. My Chananya, my Rabbanon. Right? You wanted to say that the whole issue of whether or not Oso can be interpreted or not depends upon Machlokas Chananya and Rabbanon. What is the Machlokas between Chananya and Rabbanon? The Sanya we learned in the Brisa. And now we begin with the Chachamim. And the Chachamim, the Brisa say, Oso v'esbeno no heg, bin a kevos ve'enet oig b'schar. If you shech the mother and its Vlad on the same day, again, in any sequence, doesn't matter which you shechted first, but it was on the same day, then you violate the slap. But if you shech the father and the Vlad, again, it's not always so easy to know who the father is. How do you identify the father? They don't have DNA testing for animals, but it means that there were two animals paired off, in a closed area. Anyway, so we know how to identify the father. That's called Choshishin Lizera Ha'av. And now you know who the Zera Ha'av is, and you went ahead and you shechted the father and the Vlad on the same day. According to Chachamim, no Isser whatsoever. Chananya Omer, no Bein B'schar and Bein B'nekevus. Not only if you shech the mother and its Vlad on the same day, but even if you shech the father and its Vlad on the same day, you violate the Isser. My time of the Rabbanan. Why did the Rabbanan come to the conclusion that the Isser of Osas Beno is limited to the mother? The sign we learned in the price, Vidinu. There is a logically compelling reason to include even the father. And why is that? Just one second. Vidinu. Vidinu with a question mark. Sorry, I apologize. Vidinu, is there any logical reason to say that you be chayiv even for slaughtering both the father and the vlad? Why don't we derive from Shiluach HaKan? Chiyav Kan, v'chiyav ve'em al abonim. Right, the Torah says that when you want to take the eggs, you're not allowed to take the mother. First, you have to send away the mother, and then you can take the eggs. Let's use Shiluach HaKan as the prototype to derive that we only prohibit the mother and not the father, because the Torah says Shalech Teshalech es ha'em, only the mother, and now we're going to say that Oso ves beno only applies to the mother. So why do you tell me, the Chachamim, that you would have logically come to the conclusion that applies even to the father? So the Bryce says, "Lo, I'm not going to derive any conclusions from Shiluach HaKan." And why is that? Because there's a tremendous kula in Shiluach HaKan. So let me demonstrate this. Here I am in my study, and here I have a nest. There are fledglings in the nest, and there's a mother bird sitting on the fledglings. Am I allowed to take the mother? The answer is yes, I'm allowed to. Why? Because it's my private combination of mother and fledglings in my private domain. And the Torah says in the parsha of Shiluach HaKan, Ki yikare l'cha kan tzipor. Yikare yud kuf reish he means you're out there in the desert and you happen to chance upon, I shouldn't say a desert, I should say a forest or whatever it might be, trees, and you happen to chance upon. So there's a tremendous kula that the Isur of Lo tikach es ha'em al abonim only applies if it's derech mikra, but not if it's your own private domain and your own private bird and fledglings. In Oso Vespino, if I've got two animals, a mother and a son, out there in my field, and it's mine, nobody could get it, it's right there in the corral, then I'm not allowed to shech the mother and the son in the same day. So you see, the Torah is more machmir in Oso Vespino than it is in Shiluach HaKan. Right, if it's mezuman like that, the case that I had before that is in my study, then the Torah says there's no violation of los sikach ha'em al abonim. So therefore, the Torah is makil in the case of Shiluach HaKan is tomar bi osav espenosh osabo mezuno. In the case of also if I shech both the mother and the son, it doesn't matter where these animals are, and if they're my private animals in my private domain, and therefore I can't derive any conclusions from Shiluach HaKan. I would therefore not limit the lav of Oso Vespino dafka to the mother. I would extend it to include even the father. Talmud Lomar Oso. Now, what does Oso give me? Oso, according to Chachamim, is the key word here, the key of keys. Oso is in the singular, and it means it's only one of the parents that is included in the lav of Oso Vespino. Again, we don't know which parent it is right now, but it's only one of the two parents because that's the pasuk Oso. Echad v'lo shnayim. Oso is in the singular to exclude shnayim. Okay, fine. So now we know, according to Chachamim, from the word Oso, that the Isur of Shchitas Oso Vespino only applies to one of the two parents, together with the Vlad, obviously, and the question is which parent? Which parent? Now we're going to introduce Shiluach HaKan. Meaning, if you're dealing with the scope of the Isur, you can't derive any conclusions for Shiluach HaKan and limit the scope to the female because Shiluach HaKan, the Torah is Mekil, and it's only b'mizuma and not in sheina mizuma. But if you know already from the word oso that the scope of the iser of oso vespino is limited to one of the two parents, now you have a question, a secondary question of which parent. For that, I could derive the conclusion from shiluach hakan. Now that the Torah says that you're only chayiv for one of the two parents, in the case of Osav Espino, is Achisi Ledin. Now I can logically derive it from Shiluach HaKan, because Chayiv Kan, the Chayiv Beim Alabonim, you're Chayiv in the case of Osav Espino, and you're Chayiv in the case of Beim Alabonim. Ma, Kishachayiv Beim Alabonim, in the case of in Secharav Lo, I changed the text a little bit, Af, Kishachayiv Kan, here too, in the case of Shiluach of Osav Espino, is Nekevos V'lo B'scharim. Okay. Now, the Gemara quotes the last part of the Brisa, which is going to offer another drasha from which we derive the conclusion that Osav Espino, according to Chacham, only applies to the mother, because Im Nafshecha Lomar, which means that if you don't like my first analysis, and the Gemara is going to explain why we might not like the first analysis, meaning the word oso, then I'm going to derive from beno. The word beno, even though it's in the masculine, is going to teach me that we're talking about the mother, even though she's feminine, female. Why? Because what does the word beno mean? The word beno means misha beno karoch achrav, yotze zocher she'ein beno karav yach. Gentlemen, did you take Psych 1.1 in college? Do you remember the name Maslow? I think that was his name. It was a famous experiment. I mean, I'll describe the photograph to you. You'll remember the photograph. There's a duck, and all the little ducklings are following this duck. If I remember the experiment correctly, I'm going back like over 50 years. If I remember correctly, what he did was, as soon as the eggs hatched, they didn't see the mother duck, they only saw the father duck. But anyway, if you don't remember it, it's not relevant to the sugya, but I just want to give you an example that as a general rule, the animal is what's called karuch achrei imo, meaning it's always attached to its mother. Again, Mazel proves that that's not so. But the Gemara says, it's, generally speaking, it's attached to its mother. And therefore the word beno indicates the mother. The Gemara asks, what was so terrible about the first drasha that we had, in which we derived the conclusion that the mother, and only the mother, is included in Oso Espino. And the Gemara says, Chitema Oso Zocher Mashma. I would have rejected your equation to Shiluach HaKan, to establish the mother and not the father, based on the fact that Oso is in the masculine, which would include the father. Therefore, I need the second drasha, which is beno, misha beno karach achrav yotze zocher she'ein beno karach achrav. And now we're going to turn to Daf Ayin Tes, just for a few minutes. And the Gemara says, what about Hananya? Hananya was the one who expanded the application, the scope of Osav Espino to include even the father and its Vlad. And the answer is Ksiv Oso. He took the word Oso very literally, and Oso is in the masculine, and therefore it includes Mashma Zachar, the father. Now, what about the mother? Maybe now we should come to the conclusion, according to Hananya, that Oso excludes the mother because Oso is in the masculine. And the answer is Ksiv Beno. We also have the pasuk Beno, and Beno means Shekarach Achrei Imo. Misha Beno Karach Achrav, the Mashma Nekeva, Hilkach Noeg Bein Zacharim Ubein Nekevos. So again, let's just summarize the bottom line here of the sugya in connecting Hananya with Rav Yonasan. that Hananya does not need the word o lechalik because he holds like Rabbi Yonasan that whenever the Torah says a vav, even without the word o, unless you have yachtov, you assume it's either or. So therefore, I know that you don't have to do four shchitos in order to violate this lav. It's either the shar with its vlad or the setz is vlad, and I don't need the word o to establish lechalik. Therefore, according to Chananya, based on standing on the shoulders of Rabbi Yonasan, I come to the conclusion that the word o is iberic. It's totally superfluous, and therefore I use the word o to include kilayim. So an animal that's kilayim is included under oso vs bino. Now, interesting is just a postscript to the shir that Tosis wants to prove that we paskin like Chananya, which is a great chumrah because it applies oso vs bino even to the male father. How does he prove it? Because he has a sugya b'mitzia in which Abaye and Rava have machlokas that the Gemara identifies with the same identical machlokas between Rav Yoshia and Rav Yonasan. And it turns out that Abaye holds like Rav Yoshia and Rava holds like Rav Yonasan. And we have a rule that when there's a machlokas between Abaye for Rava, we pass like Rava against Abaye. And therefore, we're going to pass like Rava, who in turn accepts the sheet of Rav Yonasan. And we said here in our sugi, the machlokas chachamim and Chananya as to whether or not Osav Espino applies even to the male depends upon Rabbi Yonasan and Rabbi Yoshia. So therefore, if I go like Rabbi Yoshia, I go like the Chachamim, and I have a kula, I only apply Osav Espino to the mother. But if I hold like Rabbi Yonasan, which means that now, if I hold like Rabbi Yonasan, then I don't need the this whole drasha, and therefore I can accept the conclusion that we paskin like Chananya, because if we hold like Rabbi Yonasan, then ipso facto we hold like Chananya, and therefore we're going to have a chumrah and we're going to expand the application of Osav Espino to include even the father, and we're going to paskin like Chananya against the Chachamim, which is very unusual, because Chananya accepted Rabbi Yonasan and Rava accepted Rabbi Yonasan, and even though the Chacham accepted Rav Oshia, but nevertheless, and Abaye accepted Rav Oshia, but we pass like Rava against Abaye. Okay, then this is where we'll stop for today. Okay, then have a great day. It's a little different than the other prakim that we've been learning in Chulu.